Today we're going to study page 28, but before we go to page 28, we need to have some introduction. First and foremost, today we are going to a new dimension. We're going to digress from the subject of Eiruvin, and we're going to discuss mainly three subjects. One, if you remember the 13 principles of Rabbi Ishmael, three of them talk about general statement in the Torah and a specific statement in the Torah. Three of those principles we're going to discuss today. Second subject we're going to discuss today, it's the law Hilchot Shratzim, the law of eating non-kosher animals, particularly small creeping animals in different size. What exactly involved with this? What's the prohibition and what's the punishment? Different size of animal, different prohibition, different categories. Third subject in which we're going to discuss is Hilchot Brachot, the different type of situations and different blessings we're going to say over different fruits or vegetables, etc. With that in mind, we go now to the introduction, another introduction to our subject itself. The first one is the 13 principles. Within the 13 principles, there are three principles. One, it's called Klal Uprat, general statement and a specific one. The second one is called the reverse order, Prat Uklal. And the third one, which basically depend on the previous two, it's called Klal Ufrat Uklal, I atadan ela ke'ein haprat, which is through a general statement in the Torah, followed by a specification, in turn by another general statement, you may only infer whatever is similar to the specification. Sound a little abstract to us, but let's dig in and understand. You have to trust me in that it's much simpler than you think. First one, Klal Uprat. Klal Uprat meaning when you have a general statement in a Torah, and that statement followed by a specific. So we said the law, it's followed by the specific. What do I mean by that? Take for example, you have in the Torah a listing of animals from which the sacrificial offerings may be brought. So the Torah says from, I'm just reading the translation to English, the text, and they said, from the domestic animals, one statement, follow that, the same pasuk, the same line, from the cattle and sheep and goats, and that's in Vayikra, in Leviticus chapter 1. So this rules teaches that no animal but cattle and sheep or goats may be used. So what happened here, the generality, which is domestic animals, and it's that generality is mentioned only to teach that is no part of the specific is included in the law except for the specific listed above. That's the first principle. Then the next one, Prat Uklal, we go by the reverse of the above, which is, take for example Hashavat Avedah. The Torah speaks to us about return of lost of objects. So the Torah says that one should return, and here is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 22, and they said his donkey, his garment, and then the Torah said any lost object. So you see here the concluding generality teaches that there are no exceptions to this rule. Now we go to the third one, which is basically the principle number 6 in the 13th principle of Rabbi Ishmael, but today we're going to discuss only the 3. It's called klal uprat uchlal, which is it's basically klal uprat, what we said earlier, general and a specific, but then there is a special scripture phrase that it's considered as a general statement. So the two general statements imply that everything is included, while the specific items in the middle imply that only they are meant. So this apparent contradiction is resolved in this way. Everything is included provided that it is essentially similar to the item specified. An example, the Torah speaks about a thief. So the Torah said in the verse imposing a fine on a thief, there are two general terms. For any matter of dishonesty and for any lost item, implying that the thief is liable no matter what he has taken. So, on the other hand, the sandwich between this general term and a specific term in between, it means a number of specific items that we mentioned. For example, an ox or a garment. So it teaches us that the fine applies to any movable object that has intrinsic value, but not to real estate, so which is not movable, or to contracts, which is testified to a debt, but have no intrinsic value. That's the GEMARA in Bava Metzia 57b. So with that in mind, that's the foundation of the first part we're going to learn. And now we just start with several lines from the bottom of 27b, which is the discussion we left yesterday. So 27b, 14 lines from the bottom of the page, the Gemara said, "B'mai kamifligei Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish veRabbi Eliezer." I'm going a little bit backward what we discussed at the very end of previous session. It's because we have to rush a little bit the previous one, and I want to make sure that it's clear because it's paving the way to our learning today. 14 lines from the bottom of the page. So they said, we have here a disputation by one of the 13 principles, which is klal uprat uklal, general statement in the Torah, specific statement, and a general statement. So we said this is based on Gemara in Sanhedrin and Gemara in Kiddushin 21b. They said, what is the disputation between Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish and Rabbi Eliezer? We have klal uprat uklal, and we have ribui and mi'ut, when the Torah expounded and says something specific. So when it's a ribui, it's everything, and not bring only one small one. So he said here it's an example. You have a general statement, soon I'm going to the specific, and then you have a specific statement. So the specific, it's basically elaboration. They want to crystallize the statement, and it's ke'ein aprat. It's part of the what we said in general. V'hanetanai kedel kaman. Now we talk about in our sugya, in our subject is purchasing a fish with the money of the tithe. Again, for those who just walk in, there are specific years in the law of the sabbatical year. There are specific years that a person needs to go to Jerusalem, and transfer to cash what needs to be a contribution, and then he redeem it in Jerusalem. While doing that, it's a question. This is in a way consecrated item. It's a holy money. In a sense, it's a redemption of money. The money, it's a tight money. The fellow wants to take that money and purchase fish with that money. So they said, if you want to purchase a fish, is an issue. And we discussed yesterday the issue of brine, etc., involved with fish. So here is the disputation. Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish and Rabbi Eliezer, these two rabbis, allowed to purchase fish with that money. How? Darshei ribuye umiute. Because one of the principle is general, specific general, so therefore they say that it's okay to do it, to go ahead and do it. Because if you remember, we said earlier yesterday that if it's a brine of the fish, it's an issue. But if it's a real fish, it's okay, you can go and purchase. Vehane Tanai, and those Tanaik sages in the era of the Mishnaic time, that they forbade to purchase with that sacred money, with tight money, fish, Darshei Klalei Uparte. They go by the principle which is similar. As soon as you see the difference in the general, specific, and in general. How? Now we elaborate on that. Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish and Rabbi Eliezer, Darshei Ribuyei Umiute. They teach it as follows. The Torah tells us in the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim, chapter 14, Pasuk 26, they said, Venatata hakesef, you take this money, again, for example, contribution of something heavy, something that you cannot carry in those years on your donkey. So you switch it to cash, and then you take that money and you redeem it. Bechol asher ta'aveh nafshecha, whatever your heart prompt, whatever your heart desire. So it means this is a statement that tells you, do what you want with your money. This is a money for time. Go and do whatever you wish to. It means that this is a general statement. Next one, riba, which means that any type of food, any type of produce, you can go ahead and purchase with that money. Then the Torah continued in that line, and they said, babakar, uvatzon, uvayayin, uvashechar. Now the Torah said you can go and get cattle, and can get sheep, or goat, wine, etc. So, mi'et, now we go to a specific in that line. And then, again, the Torah said, Ubechol asher tishalcha nafshecha. Whatever your heart prompt, whatever you wish in your heart. So here what happened? Chazar v'riba. Now the Torah, it looks like a repetition, but it's not. Why? Because remember what we said, the principle, the third principle, which is basically in the 13th principle of Rabbi Ishmael, is the principle number 6, is basically elaboration of the first principle, which is, listen carefully, riba umi'et v'riba, riba hakol, which means this specification in the middle, it means that this is an explanation of what we said in a general statement, but doesn't mean everything. It means that you should purchase whatever you wish under this category. Under this category, which means you can buy either רק בקר, only animals, or רק צאן, or only a type of livestock, or only wine, etc. So it's only under this square category, but whatever you wish. Imagine, you take a kid, you said...
Whatever you wish from the list of the specifics.
Excellent. You take a kid and you said, here is the gift for the Afikoman. You want to buy something from Toys R Us? Fine. But you go only in this lane and you can buy everything you want. Not from the movies areas and not from the games area. Only from this toys area you can buy it. Okay? So it means you bring him to Toys R Us, but you circumscribe him, you limited him to a certain section. And then you said, okay, but in that section, pick and choose. You want this type of toys, you can take this type of toys. You can take that, it's fine, but as long as it's this aisle. Lehavdil. So they said, my Rabbi, what exactly the pasuk, the line, wants to tell us, to expound it. Rabbi kol milei. They speak about anything that you can eat. Umay mi'et. And what's they taking out? Le Rabbi Eliezer mi'et tzir. Le Rabbi Eliezer, he said that, you remember what we said yesterday? That if it's brine, is not considering a produce, because it's not part of the produce, because the Ritva said, it's let's face it, it's not considering a real, something that is sustainable. It's not something that satiates you. Le Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish, according to the other Tana, mi'et mayim umelach, which means when you combine together water with salt, like you do on Pesach Seder, right? That you combine the two. So, in other words, if you have a little brine on the fish, that's not in that category. So it means when you have the klal, when you have the general principle, it means to say not everything, only ke'en haprat, which means
only from the specifics.
Mamash kmo haprat, only from the specifics, which means you have a mechane mishutaf, you have the category of all together in all the specifics. That's what you come and merabeh and said, which means you have this specific prat meforash, which tells you bakar, for example, it means from his mother, meimo, fruits or produce that it's come from a produce product, etc. So it means that you can go ahead and purchase fish with that money, with the tight money, because the fish is considering some type of produce. In general, soon you see that fish was produced from another fish. So therefore, it is fruitful and multiply from one stage to another. So that's what that means. However, other sages, the Tanaic sages in the Mishnaic era, it's like 2nd century. So those Tanaim that forbade to use the money of the tithe, Darshei, Klalei, Upratei, they go not by the mi'ut, by the klal uprat, which means kedetanya, the way that we learn in the Braita. Venatata hakesef bechol asher ta'ave nafshecha, and you take the money and you can buy whatever you wish to. Klal, which means any type of food. Ba bakar uvatzon uvayain uvashechar, any type of flock, livestock, wine, etc. Prat, which means specific food.
Right.
Bechol ubechol asher te'ave nafshecha chazar vechalal, which means klal uprat uklal I atadan ela ke'ein aprat. Only thing that is similar to the specific. Ma prat aprat meforash pri mi pri, which means you have the calf is come from
the mother, the cow.
The cow.
Yep.
You have the sheep, it's from the livestock. So it's the fruits of their mother. The same way as you have a grape or wine, it's come out of what?
From the ground, from the earth.
Yeah, bore pri hagafen. Bring the
from the vine, yeah.
From the vine. So that's one from the other. Vegidulei karka. Anything that is upri, that it's a produce of a produce. Gidulei karka, something that comes from the earth, from the ground, which is, Rashi said, if you talk about animals, they gazing in the ground, and that's the way they eat it. So that's called fruits from the ground. So af kol pri mipri vegidulei karka, anything that nizon me'akarka, that come from the ground, which means you can go ahead and purchase from the second tithe, the money from the second tithe. V'tanya idach, and we learned in the other Braita the conclusion of this explanation. Ma haprat meforash vlad vladot haaretz, which means, Rashi said, shenivreu min haaretz b'maaseh bereshit. We said in Bereshit, in Genesis, that this is part of what Hashem created from the ground. That's part of Hashem's creation. So it means vlad, vladot, something that comes from Hashem creating the ground, and then they are using that ground. Afkol vlad, vladot me'aretz, which means since the beginning, tchilat yetzirah, beginning of the creation is from the ground, so therefore you can go ahead and purchase with the money of the second tithe from the ground. So now the Gemara crystallized it, elaborate on that, and want to explain the disputation in these two braitot. And they said, "My benayu, what in a practical halacha, the difference between purchasing produce from a produce or gidulei karka, something that comes from the ground, and the second braita that speak about vlad, vladot haaretz, something that comes from the ground. What's the really difference between the two? We juxtapose now. Amar Abaye said, Dagim ika benayu. They have a disputation in regard to fish. Leman de Amar, the one who said that you can go ahead and use the money of the tithe, pri mipri vegidulei karka, you can go ahead and purchase fish from the tithe, the money of the tithe. Hanei dagim gidulei karkaninhu. We have just said that fish is considering a fruit from the ground. Why? Because fish, how fish survive? They eat from something that is on the bottom of the water. It's true, Rashi said, that fish eats fish. That's true. But the original fish, they go to the bottom and they eat it from that ground. So therefore, in that opinion, it's considering something that comes gidulei karka, something that comes from the ground. Rashi, gidulei karka ninhu, kasavar she'adagim nizonim min hakarka. So it means that the fish ate from where? From the bottom of the water. Leman de Amar, vlad vladot haaretz, according to the one who said that it's applied to what? The offspring of the earth, which means that whatever it's come from the time of creation, you cannot purchase the second tithe. Dagim mimaya ibru, which means the fish were created from water, so therefore you cannot purchase them with the money. So Rashi said in Bereshit, chapter 1, sentence 20, Pasuk, he said, Vayomer Elokim, and Hashem said, in the 5th day, let the waters teem with teeming living creatures, and the fowl that fly over the earth across the expanse of the heaven. So he said, שרץ, כל דבר חי שאינו גבוה מן הארץ, קרוי שרץ. Any living that it's not above the ground, it's considering a sheretz. So it means, here they translate it as a teeming living creature. But you see here they use the word, let the water teem with teeming living creatures. So you see here by this Rashi and this explanation that it means that the fish were created from the water, and it's therefore, according to that opinion, it's not considering from the earth, and therefore it's not part of the item that may be purchased with what? With the second tithe money. So now the Gemara asks, "Mi amar Abaye dagim gidulei kar kaninu?" Did Abaye really say that fish having grown from the ground? Is that really what he said? Ve'ha'amar Abaye, but Abaye really said the following. 28 on the top of the page. Achal putita loke arba. There is a teeming creature in the water that it's called putita. It is like a certain water insect. So he said if someone ate that, he received lashes 4 times. We need to understand that. First, let's go to Rashi. Rashi said, Sheretz hamayim katan. It's a small, tiny, certain water insect. She'ein bo kezait. It's even not in a size of.
Even it's less than an olive size.
Olive pit size, okay? Ve'afilu achri, and even though Rashi said kevan debriyahi, because it's considering a creature, achilai, it's considering that he ate a forbidden creature. Veloke arba malkuyot b'sheretz hamayim. He received 4 sets of lashes in regard to a creature that come from the water. And now he explained, and he said, we have this concept in the Torah that said that you get 40, less 1, but 40 and 4 times, because a forbidden creature, it's written in the Torah many, many times. There are 2 negative commandments that speaks about general eating a creeping creatures, and then there are 2 specifics that speak about what? The water insect. So, and there is 3 places that speaks about one on the ground, creeping creatures, and there is another one that speak about a creatures that part of the fall.
Mm-hmm.
So, according to Rashi, he said here, Ktiv betorat kohanim, number 1, Al teshakzu et nafshotechem. The Torah said in Leviticus, you shall not, in a way, contaminate your soul. That's one source. Bechol asheretz ashoretz, in any teeming creature. Second one, velot titam'u bahem, and you shall not contaminate it with them. That's the second. Arei kan shnayim. Vekalal bahem, and it included with them ben sheretz haaretz, ben sheretz hamayim, both if it's a creature in the ground or creature on the water. And then umishum besaram lo tochelu, you should not eat from their flesh. Third one, umishum vechol asher en lo snapir vekaskeset lo tochelu. We said about fish, if you remember, whoever doesn't have a scale and fig, you should not eat. So Rashi hold here that each of these lavim, this negative prohibition, each of them, because it's written 4 times, so each one of them, a person deserves a separate 40 lashes as a punishment, the same equivalent to the number of the negative commandment in a specific sheretz, in a specific category. Mm-hmm. That's Rashi point of view. It's important to note that the Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, disagree with Rashi. The Rambam said in the book of the commandment, he said in the 179 negative commandment, he has the list, and it's a little different than other books. So he said, if the Torah warns several times over one item, the person who violated it, receive a lashes only one time if it's one category. Unlike Rashi. Why? Because he hold the fact that the Torah repeats the warning is just to strengthen the prohibition, but not in order to increase the amount of the lashes or the punishment. That's not the goal in Torah. Therefore, if someone, for example, eat a blood in the size of olive, very small size of blood, even the Torah tells us in a prohibition of not eating blood, eating blood, how many times? 7 times. So even a person eat in such a small as an olive bulk blood, mm-hmm. he receive only 1 set of lashes. Now, since we talk here about putita we said is a certain water insect.
Right.
So therefore, he said it's something that has a combination of both. Of water, of flying, and of ground. It's all 3. So it's only, according to Rambam, under 1 category, but it's just a 4 different name of different prohibitions. So therefore, he agreed that you can get 4 different sets. But the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, who's born 9 years after the passing of the Rambam, he said that the way that soon you see we derive our discussion, putita is only certain water insect and nothing to do with others, because the Gemara asked, according to Abaye, if fish, you tell me that it's gidulei karka, it's come from the ground, so one who eats putita is like deserve to get a lashes also by eating something that is from the ground. So it means we derive from that discussion, the Ramban said that putita is only a water insect. So you see here, they said here, because the Torah said this type of lavim, al teshakzu velo titam'u, so it's 2 lavim, and in the water they said vechol asher en lo slapir, because whatever no fig and scale mibsaram lo tochelu, and then in the Devarim again they said the same thing. So you see here 4. So he said that therefore someone achal putita, if someone ate this type of water insect, he deserved giving 4 sets of lashes. Now, nemala. Now it may fascinate those people who balei tshuva, who became religious, what in eating even a small size of this creatures a person deserve. It's frightening. So nemala it means an ant. So an ant, he said, lokeh 5.
5.
Deserve 5. Isn't that amazing? 5 times 39, which is 40 less 1. Okay, lashes. 5 times 39. Why? Rashi said, shehu sheretz haaretz, because he is from the ground, lokeh 5. Tarte hade amaran, 2, what we said, and then he add the other 3 in all. It's amazing how the daf connected to the parsha, because all of that is in this parshat Shmini. That in parshat Shmini you have all these lists. It's amazing always that it's not by coincidence that this is the Torah portion we're going to study.
Absolutely.
And read this Shabbat. And then they go further and they said, tzir'ah, if someone eat a hornet, this is really frightening. He said in hornet he needs to get
6
sets of lashes. Why? So Rashi explains that it's all the list together that and use the term, and I'm just reading some of the Rashi. He said sheretz mitnoea umerachesh, it's moving, even it's a small size, but it's a moving creature. And the Ben Ish Chai explained this Rashi, and he said the Torah used 3 different categories. They said asher bashamayim imal, what is above the ground, ve'asher bamayim mitachat, what is in the water, below the water, ve'asher bamayim mitachat la'aretz. So he explained asher bashamayim imal, that's applied to a hornet, the tzir'ah, so that's get 6. Asher bamayim mitachat, what is the water below, that's the 5 we just mentioned. Okay, and then we said, and mitachat la'aretz, that's applied to what? To the putita, that it's 4. That's the Ben Ish Chai derived from this Rashi. So now we begin to our question. Ve'im ita, and if you come and tell me, putita namei lilkei, that also putita should be given lashes by violating the following prohibitions. Mishum she'asheretz hashoretz al haaretz, because the Torah said in every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Leviticus 11. So it means Rashi said that it's like an addition of 3 lashes.
Right.
It's not only because of the sheretz hamayim, something in the water. It means that you have 3 in addition to the 4. So it means that altogether 7. Twice because the negative commandment that talk about the water, and then the other 5 that we mentioned earlier for the animals on the ground.
Right.
So in a way, when you read it, just a side note, it's frightening to think that I read once a book by Rabbi Vaya, Vav Yud Aleph. He's a genius rabbi. I knew him for many years ago in Israel. His specialty was checking insects on different type of vegetables, etc. So one of his brilliant, fascinating articles, I'm not sure if it was an article that I read only or books, because it was both. Rabbi Vaya said that it's frightening to think that when a person eats, you don't check those, sometimes you buy it in a supermarket, what is called these greenies, you buy like chasa that you eat on Pesach, what is called? The one that you use for karpas.
Oh, you mean like lettuce or
lettuce? Thank
like
you.
Romaine lettuce.
Romaine lettuce, etc. So he explained that we have to check it very carefully, because sometimes, there are companies in Israel that does
Absolutely.
that. But even they does that, it's good to check anyway.
Check it and soak it.
Soak it and check it, because he explained, Rabbi Vaya explained that sometimes with these small insect, you may turn, like we said here, to get 4, 5, 6, or even 7 set of lashes, which means in one eating of this, you can eat not just one little insect, you can eat many, and if you multiply them, you get it. It's really beyond frightening to think that that's the amount of violation with eating this. So, just as a food for thought. Ela amar Ravina. Ravina tells us, Ofot ika benayu. I'm telling you, sometimes people ask, why we need to pay for kashrut so much money? I can say that sometimes I go in Baltimore to David Shoe. It's a kosher place. Or other places you see the people sitting for hours and checking the rice, and checking the lettuce, and checking the broccoli. It's very common that they have those small insects.
Right.
And takes them hours and hours.
Absolutely.
And these people is an extra expense for the business, but it's, in a way, the kosher market is growing because people realize, even the non-Jews, that it's healthy.
Absolutely.
So Ela Amar Ravina, Ravina said, Ofot ika benayu. The disputation between the two brightot, it's in regards to what? To a fall. Leman de Amar pri mipri vegidulei karka, according to the one who said that one may use a second tithe money only to purchase food which is the produce of produce and grown from the ground. So what happened here? He basically said that the disputation is between taking a fall from this second tithe money. Why? Because it's klal uprat. So you can go ahead and purchase a fall from that money, from the tithe money. Hanei namei gidulei karkaninu. So because fish, what we said, it's considering something that grows from the ground. Is that correct or not? We just come to conclusion that according to that one, it's not grow from the ground.
Comes from the water.
Right, right. So, because the Meiri explains that even it's true that some of the fish eat, but not all the fish eat their from the ground. So therefore, since they are not gidulei haaretz, you're not allowed to go ahead and use the second tithe money to eat, etc., to purchase those fish. Because leman de amar vlad vladot haaretz, but one who said that this applied to offspring of the earth, which means that applied to the creation. Hanei ofot min harkak nivreu. These fall were created from mud, which means, if you read carefully the text in Bereshit, they created from the mud and not what?
Earth and water.
And water, and not from the ground. And therefore they are not included among the items that you can use in a second tithe money. It's a very famous Gemara in Chulin 27b that try to discuss the contradiction between the two sentences, and the Gemara said that it was a place that is connected between the ground and the water. I'm not going there because it's above the discussion, but those who have the time, read Tractate Chulin 27b. It's a fascinating discussion. So he said, Man demrabei ofot mai tamei. What's the reason that one who includes fall, what's the reason that you can go ahead and purchase, and he derived that from klal uprat uklal, general principle, specific and general principle. Uman dememaet ofot mai tamei. And what's the reason, what's the rationale of one that excludes fall? So he said that you cannot use the second tithe for purchasing a fall. So now the Gemara explained the two writers. So now it's another point that I want to crystallize upon. we said the principle klal uprat, which is the principle 4 of the 13 principles, but it's our first principle in our discussion, general and specific. And then we said the reverse, prat uklal. Now the midah of klal uprat uklal is derivative of the first one.
Right.
So man de merabei ofot, one that include fold, what he holds, kasavar klala batra davka. You have a general principle, specific, and the other general, you go by the bottom one, the final one, the last one. And therefore, you derive the pasuk, prat uklal, na'aseh klal musaf ala prat, which means it's in addition to the specific we just mentioned. It's like another point. Vitrabolu kol milei. So he said that, you know why the Torah said the last one, the last point? It means that you can go ahead and use the second tight money to buy anything you want. Ve'ahane klali kama, and the original general statement, it's good to what? Lema'utei kol lo damelei mishnei tzdadim. It's the first generalization is effective in excluding anything that it's not similar to it in two respect, which means, what is the two respect? That he said that something that it's not connected, it's not similar to that category. So here it means if it's not produce from a produce, or something that it's not gidulei karka, something from the ground, so therefore you can go ahead and purchase with the second tight money a fall that since they have these two categories. Now, as a side note, Tosfot here tells us that it's, if you have something that is domeh lekol hatzdadim, something that is similar to all the others, he said, Hey minayu nakat, which means that it can go by all of them. Again, we're running out of time, so I'm not going to this Tosfot, but it's very interesting the way that he exposed it. Uman lema'et ofot kasavar, and one who hold klal uprat uklal, klala kama dafka. We go by the principle of the first original one. The original statement hold the meat, hold the category. And therefore, klal uprat, generalization and specification, ve'ein baklal ela ma shebaprat, which means the general specification, those of you who are doing computer program. So you have the configuration section, and you have the general statement of the program, and then you go in the, I think it's called assembly line or whatever it's called in the configuration, that you go to the specifics. So if you make a general statement, and is that basically the plan you're planning to do, all the specification has to be a subcategory, a second subcategory to the original principle. So he said, whatever you have in the subcategory or second subcategory has to be derived from the original principle of the general categorization. So he said, Hanei Ein, that's specifically to those categories. Midi acharina lo, but anything else you cannot go and purchase with the second type. Ve'ahane klala batra. So why that's the case? So now we go to principle 3, which is the principle number 6 in the 13th principle of Rabbi Ishmael. What is the idea of klal uprat uklal? The last one. He says lerabuye kol de damelei mishloshat tzdadim. So the later generalization is effective to include anything that is similar to it 3 respects, which means produce of produce, grown from the ground, and is offspring of the earth, to the exclusion of all. So basically, you see the 3 principles again: pri mi pri, produce of produce; 2, gidulei karka, grown from the ground; And the third one is Vlad, Vladot haaretz, offspring of the earth, and we derive from that not they fall. So now the Tosfot in Chulin 66, and here also the Ritva, explains that it's not necessarily these three, it can go in other category, meaning that it can be in a 4 or 5, but it's go to the principal line, the first generalization of principle. That's the way it goes. So in conclusion, so far what we understand, that there are 4 different category of food that you can use for the second tithe, for the money of the second tithe. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish hold that you can go ahead and purchase fish with that money, and you cannot purchase salty water with the money of the tithes. Okay? And in regard to a brine of fish, that's a disputation between them. Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish allow, Rabbi Eliezer forbade it. Now, in regard to purchasing a fall in that money, the first Braita allow it, and the second one forbids it. So you see here the 4 opinion of what you can do with the second tithe. Now, since we discuss all of that, we go a little bit vignette of the Eruvei Tchumim and Shitufei Mevoot. If you remember, yesterday we discussed, if you have Eruvei Tchumim, we talk about Alpay Mama, 2,000 cubit, from the place that they dwell, and also we talk about combination of several alleyways that you need to share it. So he said, if, for example, you need to take a food and put it in a 2,000 amma in Eruvei Tchumim, or you need to have a collection of food in one person in development in order to collect from all the people living in the different alleyways. So what type of food you can use for make that Eruv? Amar Rav Yehuda, Mishmei de Rav Shmuel bar Shilat, Mishmei de Rav, he said, Me'arvin bawat befa'afuim uvachala glogot uvegudgadeniyot, which means he said that you can use a certain you can establish an Eruv with a cheap and unimportant produce such as cress, parsley, sweet clover. All of this, it's some type of food that you can eat, but it's not, doesn't carry any important. Pa'apu'in, Rashi said here that it's something that we're not 100% clear. The some Meforshim said that it's cress. Chalag logot. So the GEMARA said in Tractate Rosh Hashanah about the mother of Rebbe, and also the Perusha Mishnayot la Rambam in a Tractate Shvi'it said that that's some type of a kaliach aroch. It's like here they say that it's a sweet clover, but again, and good gadaniyot, some say that I'm sorry, the previous one is called parsley, and the good gadaniyot it's called kuzbara. It's like a sweet clover. It's some say that it's good for people who have joint issues. The Ritva said that this type of food, sometimes people eat it as is. Sometimes people make a real seuda, a real meal over there. So in other words, sometimes you use it, as the Ritva said, as a some type of spread or a spices, and sometimes you make a real meal of that. Aval lo bechaziz, but not, we cannot do a eruv with green grain, which means that it's not. The Mishnah Brura said in 204, he said that tvu'ah shelo evia shlish, which means it's a very early stage of the grain. It's really green. So it's shachat, Rashi said. It's not ready. It's incongruous. It's inappropriate to use it. Velo bechafniyot. Chafniyot again, it's the date that was unripe. So unripe, so people not eating them. So therefore you cannot make an Eruv over them. So now the Gemara asks a question, and they said, if that's the case, good gedaniyot mi marvin. What we just said, we said that one established a Eruv with we use here the term of a sweet clover. So he said, is that something that you really make an Eruv over? Vehatanya. That's again a side note, but it's very important. They said, good gedaniyot merubei banim yochlu, chasuchei banim lo yochlu. This type of sweet clover, people who have many children, let's say 10 children, 12 children, 15 children, 8 children, whatever it is, large families, so they have a very fruitful semen, so they can go ahead and eat it. Why? Because it appeared that this sweet clover created a reduction of, how do you call this word? Testosterone, is that correct? Okay.
Testosterone, yeah.
Okay. Chasuchei banim, people who have unfortunately no children, lo yochlu. The suggestion the Gemara said they shouldn't eat it. Why? Because it's reduced. They withhold the ve'im ukshu lezera. If it became so strong, like a wood after they ripe, af merube banim lo yochlu. So they said if it was hardened into the seed, which means it's very hard and ready fit to be planted, so they shouldn't eat it. So it means, they say that because it's like something that it can even put a person in danger regardless of his physical. So you see here that the soft, sweet clover, it's damage for people who have no children, and the harder, it's damage even for those who have children. So now back to our question, so how come you're considering that something good for Eruv? Clear? Everyone understand? Okay. Targema. So the Gemara interpreted Rav's statement, Asher lo hukshu lezera umrubei banim. That was not yet hardened into seed, which means that it's not ripe yet, so therefore it's not established for Eruv. Umrubei banim, and those who have many children, they made it. So you have the combination of two. In that unique circumstance, you can go ahead and use it for the Eruv. Veibai tema. Again, what we ask, in one hand we said you can use it for Eruv, on the other said that it's a problematic, right? Either way, so he said, you may go and wish and say, le'olam lachasuchei banim. Even it's good for people who actually sweet clover can use for Eruv for people who have no children. Why? Because even those who have no children cannot use them, but let's face it, there are other people who have children that can use it. Milot nan, didn't we learn in the Mishnah, me'arvin le-nazir b'yayin l'Yisrael b'tumah? Remember what we said? Even Nazirite is forbidden to drink wine.
Right.
Yet we said that we can go ahead and use a wine for Eruv. And the same applied to Israel, not a Kohen or Levi, that he is not allowed to eat the Truma, yet you can use Truma for Eruv for Israel. Alma, in juxtaposition to this one, you derive from that, Af al gav de lo chazi lehai. Even the food here of the Eruv, it's not good for the owner of the Eruv, but you can use this chazi lehai. It can be good, if not for him, for someone else, as long as it's a food that can be good to some people. Hachaname, so here you derive also in juxtaposition to this one, Af al gav de lo chazi lehai. Even the sweet clover is not good for people who have no children. You can use it, chazi lehai, because those who have children, they can use it. Another explanation. V'ibai tema, ki ka'amar Rav what the Rav used, the term that you can use for good gedaniyot, he applied to what? Behim dakukei madai. So he speaks specifically about the Median clover, which is of superior quality and not harmful. So and therefore everyone can eat it. Now we go back to another category. We said avalo bechaziz. Ubechaziz lo. So you're going to tell me that we cannot use a green grain? You remember that one is not yet ready? Ve'amar Rav Yehuda amar Rav. Now we're going also in Ilchot Brachot a little bit. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, kshut vechaziz. In English you call it hops.
Right.
Hops.
Yep.
It's something that grow on the branches, right? So he said vechaziz, and the daughter and green grain. He said me'arvim ba'em u'mevarchim aleim borei prei adama. You can make an eruv and you can say the fruit of the ground. So Rav means that he said you can go ahead and use daughter, the chaziz, for eruv. And early what we said that you cannot use it. Contradiction. So the Gemara responds and they said, no, lo kashya. It's not a question. What Rav said earlier, that you cannot make Eiruvin Chaziz, mikame de'ata Rav levavel. That happened before Rav moved to Babylon. When he said a statement that you can go ahead and use a green grain, Chaziz, levatar de'ata Rav levavel. That happened later when he already came to Babylon. And he realized that people in Babylon eat a green grain, so then he backed off and he basically said that since that's considering a category of food, you can go ahead and use that for Eruv. So now the Gemara asks, wait a second, Ubavel hiruba de alma? We respect Babylon, but that's not most of the world. Most of the world does not eat a green grain. So just because the Babylon use it, so Ritva explains here that there are 2 points. Number one, you're going to tell me that the whole world has to follow Babylon because they have the rule? And go further, the second point, it says quite the contrary. In Babylon, they shouldn't make it because it's a different type of green grain, and even by them it should not considering some type of food. The Tosfot also elaborated that type of chaziz in Babylon, that sometimes you have a different category of the green grain. Vehatanya, here is a source. We learn in the Braita hapol. We said that beans, it's some type of legume. Vehaseora, vehatiltan, and barley and tiltan in Hebrew you call it helbe. Helbe, Rabbi Ovadim Abatanua in Kil'ai in chapter 2 said that it's like fenugreek.
Fenugreek, yep.
Yes, that you see it. It's come with a very large bag, vegetable bag. Basically the hilba, the Yemenite Jews combine it with soup, with spicy and soup, and they eat it. They said it's good for the intestines. Shezra'an leyarak, that you planted in order as an herb, which means it was the animal father. So he said, Batla da'ato etzel kol adam, because most of the people hold the seed and not the entire green. Lefichach zra'an chayav, and therefore, if he planted that seed, he is he needs to bring a tithe, even he doesn't meant to eat the seed. And he said, Virakan patur, but however, the other part, the herbs are exempt. Why? Because usually people don't take it when they are green.
Right.
So it's not considering a food. השחליים והגרגיר. And he said about the cress and argula, which is commonly eat both in the green state and the seeds. He said shezra'an liyarak, he planted it in order for them as herbs. Mit'asrin yarak vazera, he said they are tight both as herbs and as seeds. And zra'an lezera, if one planted them for their seeds, mit'asrin zera veyarak, they are tight as seeds and as herbs. It makes no difference how they eaten, because they are both considering a food. So earlier we said that what makes something food is by way that people eat, and something that eaten by the minority of the people, it's not considering as a food. And then you see that Rav hold in his second, that when he backed off and he changed his mind, he said that Chaziz in Babylon, since they have the tradition to eat, it's fine. It's the minority of the people in the world. So how you make it fine for Eruv? So now the Gemara explained, and they said, Kika Amar Rav, when Rav used the term that you can go ahead and use a green grain as an Eruv, he meant to say 28b, he speaks about bidginunyata, which means he talks specifically about a green herb that it's in a garden variety, which is most of the people eating in any place. So zera gargir lemay chazi, argula seed, for what they are good for, because if it's not good for, the Mishnah said at the beginning of Masrot that there's something that has to be good as a food, you can use it as a tithe. Otherwise, you cannot use it as a food. So he said this type of argula sin for what is suitable. So because people are not plant sleeve, only that part that people eat. Otherwise, they don't eat. Amar Rabbi Yochanan sheken rishonin shelo היה להם pilpelim. He said the past generation, the past generation they have no pepper. שוחקים אותו ומטבלים בו את הצלי. So they crush these seeds and they dip the roasted meat with them. So what happened here is that argula seeds, it's also eaten, even they are not in a typical use. Tosfot said that that this type of argula seeds, it can eat independently, not necessarily by crushing it, and not necessarily by dipping it, and therefore that's the reason you need to give a tithe. But the Ritva said that if something is good for food, and by dipping it, it's enough to make it good for maaser. Now, since we talk about a green and argula and all of that, now we digress for a second in regard to a bracha, which it's much simple in a sense. It's a story, it's a gadeta, but we derive several points of brachot. Rabbi Zeira ki hava chalish migersei, hava azil veyati vapitcha de Rav Yehuda bar Ami. When Rabbi Zeira turned old and he was exhausted, all of those years of studies, so he used to sit by the entrance of the Beit HaMidrash, house of study of Rav Yehuda bar Ami, and he explained and he said, Amar ki nafke ve'al yerabanan eikum mikamayu v'akabel beru agra. When the rabbis come in and out, I will stand for them, and as a result of that, I get the reward. So what does that mean? He meant to say that the Torah tells us in Leviticus 19, they said you should honor the elderly, and they speak about the Torah scholar. So the Gemara said in Kiddushin 32 that that's apply not old in age, but mean old in learning, which means someone that he does that a great Torah scholar. So the Bnei Sachar explained that that's the idea of you should fear your Lord your God, when the Torah repeats so many times. That if a person wants to reach that level have the real awe of amazement of God, fear of God, he needs to make an extra effort to honor Torah scholar. So that's like a reward for that good deed. So in other words, he in a sense doesn't do it for the reward itself, he just elevates his level of spirituality, since he couldn't sit and study in the same level as he used to. So what happened at that time? Nafak ata yenuka deveit rav. It's a boy, a young boy, young yeshiva student came out. Basically, some of the rabbis said that that's applied to a cheder boy. It's like 4, 5, 6 years old. Amar le, Rav Zera asked this little boy, "Ma yagmerech rabach? What do you learn today?" Amar le, "Kshut bore pri adama." He said that we study at Dada, and we said that you make the blessing of the fruit of the ground. That's the blessing for that. Chaziz, we also learn about green grain. She'akol miya bidvaro. You make the blessing of she'akol for that. Amar le, Rav Zera said to him, wait a second. Adraba, ipra mistabra. You should go the other way around. Hai me'ara kamirvei. Over there, say that it's this green grain derives nourishment from where? From the ground. V'hai me'avira kamervei. But the daughter derives nourishment from the air. So he said, so it's appropriate to say a blessing over each item according to the source of the nourishment. So the Gemara bring the halacha, and they said v'hilcheta ki inucha deveirav, that we say bore pri adama over this kshut, this daughter, and she'akol on the green grain. My tama, what's the reason? Hai gmar pirei v'hai lav gmar pirei, because the first one is fully ripened produce, and the green grain is not fully produce. So Rashi explains, and the Tosfot also here explains that it talk about a green grain that come from the some type of a field, and that's the reason. But in general, the Magen Avraham said in Orach Chaim 204, he said that anything that is not fully written, you say she'akol. And the Aruch HaShulchan said that no, that's apply only to any type of grain that reach the 1/3 of the level of the growth. But other than that, you have to say bore pri adama. Anyway, we'll do it later in a practical how. My de amar hai me'ara kamarvei. So what you tell me that this green grain is come from the ground and therefore bore pri adama, v'hai me'avira kadar, the other ones from the air. Loi, it's not correct. Kshut name me'ara kame'arvei. Kshut, which means daughter, is also derived nourishment from the ground. The ha kachazinan the katlinan leile hizmanta, because we see when the prickly shrub is cut off, umaite keshuta, and the daughter attached to it dies. So it shows that the daughter also derives its nourishment from the ground, even that is not directly. So therefore the proper way is to make bore pri adama. So now the Gemara asks, we said earlier in the 28a, we said that when it's come to a date, so if it's unripe date, you don't do a eruv. So he said bechafniyot en me'arvin, you don't do an unripe date eruv. Ve'atanya kor, we learn in regards to core that's something that the heart of the palm, which is the soft, the edible inner core of the palm tree, said nikach bekesef maaser, when it's a soft and good for food, you can use the tight money. Ve'en metameh tumat ochalin, and it does not contract the ritual impurity of foods. because it's not actually food. וחפניות, and we said an unripe date, ניקחות בכסף מעשר ומטמאות טומאת אוכלים. They may brought as a second tithe money, and even contract the ritual impurity. רבי יהודה אומר, קור הרי הוא כעץ לכל דבר. He said that the heart of palm is like any tree for all any type of legal point. אלא, excluding שניקח בכסף מעשר, excluding that it may be brought with a second tithe money, וחפניות, הרי הן כפרי לכל דבריהם, the חפניות, it's unripe dates, is like a regular fruit, שפטורות מעשר, they exempt from the tithe. So you see a contradiction. I said, הטעם, we're running out of time, I see it. הטעם there in the bright eye, it's told בדיניס חני, that apply that never fully ripen. So therefore they can have טומאת אוכלים, and the Gemara rejected that point. We said, יחי בעילמה רבי יהודה פטורות מן המעשרת. רבי יהודה said it should be exempt from the tithe. והתניא רבי יהודה לא הוזכרו פגי ביטיוני, these figs that is not fully ripe. So it's not considering a fruit, אלא לעניין מעשר, only in regard to tithe. ופגי ביטיוני, that the place called ביטיוני, that's the unripe fig. והנה the tovina, that the large one of the date, חייבים במעשר. They need to bring, because they never fully ripe fully. So that's the full fruits from that tree. So therefore they come with another conclusion. So they talk about male ripen fruit of the palm tree that's applied here, and they said that it's never been fully written. In regards to the law of impurity of food, it's different. כדאמר רבי יוחנן ולברורים מתקן על ידי האור, החנם ולברורים מתקן על ידי האור. So because he said, since they are fit to sweeten through the cooking with fire, so here you can use it for cooking with fire. But in regard to eruv, you have to have a food that you can eat it immediately without any process. So therefore, Rav said that when it's come to kafniyot, to unripe date, you cannot make it as a eruv. Part of our discussion today, it's in regard to shratzim, eating a different insects, and we explained the many issues, large issues, but one of them is the set of lashes, which said it's as a punishment. So this is a Magid Mishnah and the Rambam, Ilchot Ma'achalot Asurot, chapter 2. He said, if one ate putita, which is like a water insect, so it's liable to receive a 4 set of malkot, but because the reason for this is that one who has violated several different type of prohibitions. But most rabbis concur that the Rambam's conclusion in that way, but explain it a little different. But the key point is that what I explained on Rabbi Vaya, that sometimes you take even a leather, and if you don't check it properly, or broccoli and things like that, you can be in a very serious set of violation of Torah law. We also explained about the second tithe money, and we said second tithe money may be used for purchase a poultry, and we explained that when it's come to Eiruv kafniyot, to use a unripe date and sweet clover, so it's prohibited to establish an eruv from something that it's not ready, like not ready food, like unripe dates. That's a person should not use a sweet clover that harden into seeds. And this is Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 386. They said that this type of food is dangerous for people who doesn't have children. But then they concluded, as far as the eruv, it makes no difference as long as serve as a food for some people. We talk about tithe from beans and barley, and we explain if one planted beans, barley, or other type of grain, and legumes with the intention to use them as herbs, you should not separate them, separate tight from the green parts, but from their seeds. That's the Rambam, Ilchot Trumot, chapter 2. He also said that tiltan, which we call it hilba, it's planted for its seeds. Its branches are exempt from tithes. Again, the Rambam there in chapter 2 explained all the difference between shachalaim, gargir, pol, seorah, tiltan. It's a different category, and we don't have a time for that. The last halacha of today, it's we talk about bracha of chaziz, and we said that the blessing for a green grain is by whose word all things came to be. It's recite over the green grain and that not grow in the garden. That Shulchan Aruch Horachaim 204 is just a general shehakol. And tomorrow in Mitzvah Shem we continue in those halachot. We're going to speak about bitter almonds and the blessing of the radish, etc.
What is the halacha for using maaser sheni for fish?
We explained, it's a good question.
Yeah.
So we explained that there are three categories.
Right.
Brine is an issue.
Right, understood.
Regular fish is fine.
Okay.
And we explained that there are four different categories. Remember, the two Braitot and two Tanaim. But in general,
right.
Let's go a little deeper and understand that when you use something as a second type for food, it has to be food.
Right.
So if you talk about salt water,
right,
or you talk about
absolutely.
brine from fish, it's little fat on a fish. It's not, in that sense, a real consumption food. I think that that's the deep meaning with this category of taking pidyon maaser sheni second type and using it for that purpose.